Colleagues, good morning. Thank you very much for coming. Welcome back to Metrolinx. I hope everybody had an excellent summer. Certainly lots was accomplished here over the last few months, and we'll report on some of that today. A few other introductory items. First, I'm delighted that we have our board is being renewed and with renewals of appointments and new appointments to the board. Marianne McKenna, Bonnie Patterson, and Howard Shearer have just been reappointed by the provincial cabinet for second three-year terms. They've been great members of the board to date, and I'm delighted that each of them has agreed to serve for another three-year term. In addition to that, three other individuals have been appointed to the board, each of whom brings very special strengths to the board. Each of them appeared before the Standing Committee on Public Appointments in the last couple of weeks, and their OIC appointments have since been confirmed. The first is Carl Zare, who's sitting three to my right. Carl brings great municipal leadership experience to the board. He was, as you will know, the mayor of Kitchener for an extended period of time and retired successfully as mayor, rather than retiring unsuccessfully on account of, as some do, on account of ill health when people get sick of them. Carl showed great leadership, was served with distinction, with great effectiveness, and stepped down. And as soon as he did, we were delighted that he was prepared to consider joining the board of Metrolinx. He's a former chair of the Big City Mayors Caucus and Large Urban Mayors Caucus. He, of course, comes from and lives in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, which is an important part of our long-term planning, and Carl will bring that perspective of someone just outside the GTHA to our work as the GTHA continues to expand and as the corridor between Toronto and Kitchener-Waterloo is so important. So, Carl, thank you very, very much for signing up. You're gonna be a really wonderful addition to the board. Second, to my left by two, is Upkar Arora, also a fabulous addition to the board with a very different set of strengths. He is the co-founder, managing director of Lumina Partners, which is an independent financial advisory firm. Upkar, over his career, has worked with many of the most important financial institutions and businesses in Canada. He's known for his absolute brilliance in finance, and that will bring a great deal to our work. He does a lot more than just finance. He also is a specialist in dealing with complex organizations and developing solutions in complex organizations. He's demonstrated that in many ways. But he's done it included in his public service as the very successful chair of the board of the McMichael Gallery, which he's done and served with the distinction and brought McMichael to ever greater prominence. Upkar is from Oakville and will bring that representation of our western flank. And as you know, the Lakeshore West corridor is our busiest, and Upkar is a daily rider on that corridor. The third addition to the board is Brian Davey, who is furthest to my left here. Brian is a triple threat. He comes public service, private sector, and university sector. He has served as the Deputy Minister of Finance for the province of Ontario. He has served as a Senior Vice President of the Royal Bank of Canada, and he served as a Vice President of the University of Toronto. He is widely regarded as one of the finest public servants of his generation. He's won the Vanier Medal for his public service. He has a comprehensive knowledge of the multiple sectors in Ontario. He lives in downtown Toronto, I think in the TIFF building, and so right in the heart of Toronto. So we've got Kitchener, we have Oakville, and we have the heart of Toronto. I've personally worked with Brian 20 years ago and know just how remarkably good he is, and he will bring both public and private sector perspectives to our work. So those three individuals, welcome to all of you. Thank you for agreeing to serve. I think the board was really good before. It's even better now, combined with the renewal of our three colleagues. The other thing I wanted to note this morning before turning to the business of the meeting is today represents the 5th anniversary of the appointment of our president and CEO, Bruce McQuaig. And this board's made a lot of important decisions over the past, since it was created. But the best decision of all the decisions we've made over these years since we were formed in 2009 was to persuade Bruce to cast his lot with us and to serve as our leader. Bruce, in our collective view, has done a fabulously good job as our president and CEO. We are thrilled with the leadership he has brought to the organization. While he asked me not to make even mention of the fact this was his 5th anniversary, we do recognize all other employees when they reach 5 years of service, and it seemed to me wrong to fail to recognize our leader on his day of 5th year of service. So Bruce, thank you for your first 5 years. We look forward to your next 15 in the same. You've served us brilliantly well, and we're very grateful to you. And I want to present you with your 5-year service award. Bruce, congratulations. I do want to note that on the table for the members of the board are a couple of documents which we were asked to circulate to the board. The first is correspondence from Laura Zeglin and Sam Barbieri on behalf of Options for Davenport. They sent us a package of materials which they asked to be circulated to all members of the board, which has happened, dealing with the Davenport Diamond project. So that has been noted, and the board has discussed it and will continue to discuss those issues. Second, we have a submission from the Residential and Civil Construction Alliance of Ontario titled "The Time is Right for Ontario to Implement Dedicated Fuel Taxes." We were asked to circulate that to the members of the board as a contribution to the public debates in this regard, and we have done that. And as you know, we have an active interest in funding funding our investments, and we welcome the contribution that we had with that paper. That, I think, Mary, brings us to the CEO's report, unless there's anything else I meant to deal with. I see no one on the board has anything they want to raise, so I'm going to turn to our CEO, Bruce McQuaig, on the first day of his second 5 years. Over to you, Bruce.
Thanks very much, Rob, and thanks for all the support from the board. I do appreciate it, and from the team at Metrolinx. It's been a very quick 5 years, and the next 5 years will be just as quick. Welcome to the new board members and to the returning board members. Thank you for your service. It's an important function that we play here, and I look forward to working with you over the next 3 years. I try to start these meetings with just a bit of a review of some of the progress that has been made over the past few months since we were last together in June. And there are a couple items I'd just like to highlight. I won't spend a lot of time on these, but I wanted to recognize, first of all, our partnership and funding investment in the Toronto Bike Share program of $4.9 million, which is really focused on expanding the network of bike share, not only within the City of Toronto, but looking at how we can extend to other parts of the region as well. We're in the process right now of searching for and ultimately securing strategic partners for GO Transit and Presto in terms of new kinds of innovation in commercial opportunities at GO stations, for example, partnering with respect to the value that's intrinsic in the Presto fare card. And we've had a lot of interest from the private sector in terms of how they may partner with us, and we're looking forward to how we can hone those down and replicate some of the positive experience we've had with Union Pearson Express in terms of founding partners in that case that are contributing to offset the capital and operating costs of that service. In terms of Presto, on July 9th, we got to the milestone of 26 subway stations that are Presto enabled. Our objective was to achieve that in advance of the Pan Am Parapan Games, and we succeeded in that respect. And we're also in the process right now of piloting a paratransit model for Presto with York Region, and we're having conversations with all of the regional transit operators about how we can take this pilot and apply it in their jurisdictions as well. Also pleased that we're making progress in terms of deploying Presto on the TTC's legacy streetcars. Some people may have seen the first streetcar being in test mode over the course of the late spring and summer, and we successfully completed those tests, and we're starting the process now to deploy Presto on the existing streetcar fleet. And that will, again, be another step forward in the implementation and deployment of Presto on the TTC. On the Eglinton Crosstown, we reached financial and commercial close with Crosslinks Transit Solutions at the end of July, and this is a major step forward in terms of delivering on the Eglinton Crosstown LRT project. And we've just entered the marketplace on the Finch West LRT with a request for qualifications issued in the marketplace earlier on this month. So again, some significant steps forward on that front. In terms of GO Transit, our customers encountered a significant change with the closure of the Bay Concourse in August, and taking advantage of the investment and the expansion that we've done in terms of the New York Concourse at Union Station. And I must say that our customers have adapted very well in terms of this major change in terms of our operating environment. And there was a major effort by GO staff in terms of making sure that information was available to customers so that there were as much making the transfer to the new facility as easy as possible for them in their daily commute. We've also launched 14 additional midday train trips on the Kitchener corridor between the Mount Pleasant Station in Brampton and Union Station, and that is building on the promise of the investment that we've been making in the Georgetown South corridor over the last number of years, and represents a significant increase in the amount of service that we can provide to our customers in that part of the region. I'm delighted to say that we had a very, very successful contribution to the Pan Am Parapan Games over the course of July and August. There will be a report to the board later on in this meeting, but I'm simply delighted with how the team pulled together, worked with our transit partners and other agencies, with the municipalities, with the other partners to deliver, I think, a very effective transit and transportation solution for the Pan Am and Parapan Games. Finally, I'd also like to just note two significant milestones in the organization. First of all, I was really proud to participate on Friday night in our first ever ceremony where we awarded to 28 of our transit safety officers the Governor General's Peace Officer Exemplary Service Medal. This is the first time that we've been able and have been authorized to make this award to our transit safety officers, and both past and present. And it was really delightful to be part of that ceremony with their family, with those individuals, to recognize the great service that they've provided for over 20 years, making our customers travel safe, secure, and providing wonderful customer service. Finally, I'm not sure if Mary Prock is here this morning. Is Mary here?
Yes, she is. There she is.
Hi, Mary. I just wanted to recognize that Mary has been selected by the International League of Railway Industry Women as the Woman of the Year.
Here, here.
So congratulations to Mary for that.
That's nice.
So with that, that's my report, and I'll put the chair back, or put the table back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mary, that's really nice. Congratulations. Really nice. Thank you, Bruce. Are there any questions to Bruce at this stage? I see none, so we'll go right to the agenda. We have Regional Express Rail Progress Update. Leslie Wu, Jack Collins, and James Perkis. Who's taking the lead? Les, are you?
I'm kicking it off, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the board, and thank you for the opportunity. Many of you are familiar, and we've reported in the past on the Regional Express Rail. I'm just going to spend some time briefly this morning going through where we are in terms of analysis that's specific to new stations. And before I get going, I just want to point out the uniqueness of the exercise we're undertaking. Historically, any additions of new stations to this system have come as a result of incremental additions of service. RER and the Regional Express, the GO Regional Express Rail has created an opportunity for us to look system-wide at how we would address the issue of new stations given the new service levels and the major transformation that RER is about to bring forward to us.
So this encompasses possible new stations because of the Smart Track proposal, but also new stations anywhere else in the system.
Yes, the 7 corridors.
This is a methodology applicable to the entire the
We've-
entire
we've-
system.
Yeah, we've taken a comprehensive approach, so therefore looking at it across the whole network. The other little point I want to make sure to make is that, of course, stations are more than just functional structures. They actually provide an opportunity to create a sense of place and community. They have the ability to enable neighborhoods, communities, cities, and towns for development opportunity. They have a great opportunity for the convergence of so many activities that we can really optimize the investment over, above, and beyond just transit. And I think that's an important aspect about how we approach the evaluation of the opportunities for new stations. So I'm going to take you through our sort of understanding of how we see the role of new stations, the impact, a bit about our methodology to bring forward recommendations on where we think are the best opportunities for new stations within the whole GO network, and then explain as well, the criteria. We're not through the whole process. We're sort of at the front end, and I will be coming back to you with more detailed recommendations in the spring. So just as a reminder, we are a 7-corridor network. There are already in play 7 new stations underway. One we recently opened for the Pan Am Games, West Harbour in Hamilton, and Caledonia. They're listed there, but there are quite a number now that are well underway. Some are under construction, some are just at the tender stage, but tender as in procurement, not tender. And but these are 7. We have a total of 63 across the network.
Just give us a time frame. What would the time of decision-making have been for these? Is this a 5-year process that's led to these 7? Is this a 15-year process? Or is it a 6-month process that's led to these 7 being planned and approved and underway?
So they vary. I have to say they vary. So for the example, Gormley, which I believe we began the work on that, I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, whereas West Harbour has been sort of longer in the tooth. Depends on the extent of the complexity of the environmental assessment work and the design and engineering work, and of course the impacts in the community. So they vary, but
They're multi-year rather than
multi-year. They don't take 6 months, if that's what you're asking. The other thing I'd like to point out is why at this, I sort of top-lined it at the beginning. Why now? Why had we not taken this approach before? The history of the GO network has been one of incremental improvements. The GO Regional Express Rail, as we've said over and over again, is truly transformative in that it is a system-wide change, and the level of service, it is a big step change in terms of the level of service we're introducing. So we are now having the opportunity to look in particularly in the more dense parts, communities that are more dense or plan to be more dense along these corridors. I just would point out on the issue of Smart Track, we have included every single one of the proposed Smart Track stations as part of our analysis. Just to point out that the tension in making decisions around a new station sort of fall in this way, that there are many advantages. Obviously, more stations means more access, more customers. It allows us to integrate better with other local modes, and they can be a catalyst for development, as I said before. There also is a kind of impact that they have that we have to measure against, which is more stations means you're stopping more frequently, which means it has an impact on the travel time within the corridor, in particular those people getting on at the top end of a corridor. And so therefore, it can cause delays for some people or longer trip times than without. There's, of course, the inherent additional costs, both capital and operating. And if not carefully planned, locating a station can lead to unwanted urban sprawl, particularly in more remote areas. So it's not that they always do, but you have to make sure that it's planned very carefully so that it doesn't. We have 5 key objectives around new stations, and one, of course, is the improvement of service and adding riders, and this is complementary and additive to what we expect the GO RER service to offer, minimizing the impact on trip times for existing customers. There is the need to have what we refer to as appropriate station spacing. Vehicles have the ability to accelerate and decelerate. You want to make sure that you're optimizing your investment in a vehicle so that it actually reaches a running speed. Otherwise, it's only going slow all the time.
Does your analysis take account of the fact that these vehicles will all be electric
Yes.
in due course?
Yeah. Yes.
Which
Definitely.
allows closer
Yes,
station
it does.
spacing.
Yes. We're supporting.
Sorry, two
we
more questions here.
Sorry,
Just-
go ahead.
Just directly related to this, when we've had conversations before, we've talked about the objective of value capture around stations.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not an objective as well?
Yeah, that's actually under the fourth bullet. It's not explicit, but it's implicit in supporting regional and municipal plans. That I'm referring to their land use plans and their development ambitions. That's a general piece around it. I can go into that in more detail if you like, because we have a very specific criteria around that.
Ann, were you same question or?
It's the same questions that I've asked before. One is around the economic objectives, and the other one is around supporting provincial policy around intensification, to maybe make those more explicit. if we
Yes,
could.
okay. And then, of course, not every station is slightly different because of the locale, and so our ability to ensure that the roles and the need of each location are addressed, and there are very different needs in an urban versus a suburban context. The analysis is we've kind of grouped it into a 6-stage process. We are actually at the 3rd stage right now. I'm going to explain what we've done to date, but just to mark the different stages. First, that we identified an initial list. I'll talk a bit about that. There were over 120 sites along the 7 corridors that we began with. We then
Let me stop you on that, because when I read it, I wondered if I was either a municipality or a land developer or a business, and I had a vision that there should be a station at location X. How do I make sure my idea got into the hunt of 120? And if I didn't get mine in the hunt, and I read this report today or last couple of days on our site, and I have 121st, I got the next one. Is it too late for me to get into the analysis if there's something I wanted to raise with Metrolinx as a station that's worthy of consideration?
So let me answer the first question first, and then the second. So first of all, over the many years, we have had, there's two avenues, generally speaking, that people have approached us either individually, whether it's landowners, developers, along all of our corridors. We consistently, every year, every month, we do have people coming to us. We track those, so those are in the big bundle. We work with municipalities. When they identify and do their official plans or transit master plans, they identify where they think they would like to see future stations. That's in the bundle as well. Obviously, those who have identified it, we know about them. Anybody who hasn't, we don't. So at this stage, if there was something else, of course we would look at
So if
it.
this meeting triggered
100 people to come forward.
another idea coming from some municipality, you can still,
Yeah,
it's not too late to get on the train.
It's not too late. It's not ideal if it might change our schedule. I want to talk a little bit about schedule, but it's not too late. Though if I got 100, I would have to come back to the board
I
with
said if you had one more,
a different
121st,
schedule. Yeah.
one more.
Yeah. So the second stage then is and by the way, there is in the appendix the long list of stations that we did look at. The second stage really we're going to focus the analysis, and I'll talk a bit more about that, and the third is around evaluation. Along the first 3 stages, we've primarily been engaged with municipal officials. When we go to stage 4, we will open it up a bit more broadly, because once we've gone through stage 4 about this sort of broad list, we're then going to move to a far more detailed, granular analysis to get to what we are referring to as the short list. So that will be when we identify and work with far more criteria and far more touch points to get a deeper understanding. And that it's after stage 4, I'll be in a position to come forward to you with more definitive recommendations. So just now, if you don't mind, bear with me as I take you through stage 1. In stage one, we are looking at the site and the network considerations such as I mentioned, station spacing, key transit connections and intersections. The sites identified historically by us and listed in public documents that have legislated status or municipal status. And in this process, plus what I described to you before, we have identified over 120 sites. So that's the first part. The second part, second stage is when we scored and compared the sites based on 3 key categories. So we took from the full list of criteria and we selected, because if we had to do all 120, all with the deeper dives, we would not be able to get to where we need in a timely fashion. So we've selected 3 of what we consider critical ones: planning and the land uses in and around the location, the ability of the station to provide heightened connectivity for riders and travelers and people, residents and employees and employers, and then, of course, the technical feasibility. And this is at a fairly high-scale screening level that we do this. That was completed a couple months ago. And then we moved to stage 3, where we started to ask the questions: where are the new how will they improve the service and how will they increase the number of riders? How many stations can we accommodate without negative impact? Where do they fit? And there's an appendix on that. And then we identified in this process of stage 3, we landed on the 40 measures that we're now going to proceed with evaluating all 50 under these 4 categories. So there's 40 measures, there's 4 categories. I will point out that when you see the listing, there are a number of potential locations that are very closely clustered together. So we really have to understand, obviously we won't be able to do as many tightly together, and so we have to understand the pros and cons between the combinations of the different pieces. We will, and I'm happy to speak in more detail about that stage 2, but as we move forward, slide 11 really kind of helps you understand our decision tree as we move forward. We're now going to have, over the fall and next couple months, further deeper discussions with stakeholders. We're going to do a filter which says, how does this support the RER program? And in doing so, ensuring that we don't compromise the service concept that we've laid out. We also have constraints relative to our budget and the economy with which we have to operate, economy meaning the economy of the project. And we want to try and maintain the timeline that has been given to us, which is to complete the GOA Express Rail to a 10-year window, because some of these things may take longer than others. And then, based on the criteria, we're going to go. We've gone through a bit. We're going to go through a bit of a pass-fail, and if you pass, basically you go forward to a much more detailed business case analysis. If you seems severe to say fail, but fail really means we need to push off the evaluation to a later date, because it may not be that within a time window that we have and the means we have that we can address it right away. And then we will move to offering you a recommendation. So that is my, really, so I'm sort of repeating myself now by saying the stages, but that's it. There's way more depth to this, and I know we've included the notes and there's an appendix, so I expect maybe through the questions I can address some of those.
Thank you very much. Bruce, do you want me to take a discussion of this, or should we get Jack and James to do their presentation and then take questions on either part? I'm just alert to the time frame.
I would suggest, why don't we go into Jack and James's presentation and deal with questions as a group?
Okay. Jack?
You can stay there.
Thanks. The intent of the presentation is to give the board a quick update on the progress we're making on the Regional Express Rail. And I'm going to turn it over to James to give you a corridor-by-corridor overview of the work we're doing on environmental, design, and construction activities. James?
James, just remind our visitors who you are, since this is only about your second time you've spoken to the board.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm James Perkis. I'm the Executive Vice President for the RER program.
And you have to speak somewhat louder, as we got some people in the back who can't hear you.
Okay. Okay, so good morning, and the good news that I like to show initially was that for all the corridors, we're actually working in all areas. On the Barrier Corridor specifically, we've started environmental assessment and designs, and we're progressing the double tracking, the New Caledonia Station, and the Davenport grade separation. In addition, we are doing design modification studies for Aurora, King City, Maple, and Rutherford stations. And we've engaged a consultant to do a prioritization of the grade separation choices we have along the corridor. For the Kitchener corridor, we are progressing with the design of the Highway 401 structure and Etobicoke North Station. We are continuing discussions with CN for infrastructure requirements between Bramalea and Brampton and Georgetown. And we are continuing to work with the city for the smart track options on Eglinton West. For the Georgetown South programme, as Bruce just mentioned, that's coming to an end. We expect that to be completed by the spring 2016. As a result of that good work, we've been able to launch 14 new two-way services in September the 8th. On Lakeshore West, we're continuing studies for grade separations at Kerr Street and Burlock Drive, and these will be completed shortly, and we'll start engagement with the town of Oakville and Burlington City in October. Construction continues on Lakeshore West at West Harbour Station, Exhibition Station, and Clarkson. For Lakeshore East Corridor, we are working on EA and design for the expansion of the corridor between Gilwood and Pickering stations, and we've identified property impacts for grade separations, and we will start the engagement with the local community. On the Stouffville corridor, the EA is approved for the Scarborough Junction to Unionville GO station, and the track design is now at 95% completion. Community consultation is commencing for phase 1 of the double track between Agincourt and Milliken stations. On a Milton corridor, we're continuing with planning and design at Cookville GO station, Milton GO station, and a Kipling GO station. On Richmond Hill, design continues on Bloomington GO station, and construction is active at Gormley GO station. With Union Station Rail Corridor, the first thing you would notice is that the Bay Concourse was closed in August and construction now proceeds. The train shed rehabilitation programme is in progress. On the newer technologies for network signals and communications, we've completed a feasibility study for Go Fibre communication network. We've started a preliminary design for signalling at Union Station, and we've just awarded a contract for the new Go Transit control system. The next stage of the enhanced train control system is moving forwards to procurement. For the electrification, we've appointed a technical advisor who's been in place since June. We have a target for the completion of the EA by December 2016. And we started an evaluation for the alternative financing and procurement approach for the main electrification contract. And lastly, for the network facilities, We are continuing construction at Willowbrook Rail Maintenance Facility, the East Rail Maintenance Facility at Whitby, and we will shortly be awarding a contract for the GO Transit Control Centre.
James, thank you for that. Yikes.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. Fantastic. Fabulous, actually, to see so much progress across the board. What's the most delayed piece? If you had to say, in the context of a great report, is there anything that's particularly concerning you in terms of the progress we're making?
No, not at all. Not at this point.
I like it. Leslie, why aren't your reports always like that?
I'm at the front
With everything
end.
going
I'm at
perfectly.
the front end, solving all the problems.
Those are the reports. The floor is now open for questions or comments on any aspect of it. I have a very narrow question, James, about the concourse closing and the effect on the path. Now the city's opened up south of Union. The path used to come up and through Union Station outside the Air Canada Centre, indoors, and you can't walk up there anymore. Is there an indoor path between what I'll call south of Union Station and north of Union Station now, or is the path broken for a couple of years?
Yeah, you can go.
There is a path.
Yeah,
There is a path, there is a way?
you have to go through, sorry, can I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
If you go, instead of going straight through where you would have in the play zone of
Right.
Air Canada, you go to the left and through the doors, you end up in the Via Concourse and you can
Okay,
get up.
so you can still get through,
Yeah.
we just need, people just have to learn a new pattern.
Yeah.
I was thinking with hockey and basketball starting, people were gonna be irritated by not being able to go their traditional way.
And just to that point, we've been working with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment in terms of communicating to their customers about the change in the linkages through Union Station. And so we're very mindful of trying to make sure that information is available.
Great. The floor is open. Janet, were you?
I was just, but has the city, I'd understood the city had made a decision not to continue to tunnel up York Street. Do we know that?
The path.
Yeah, on the path, yeah, because it stops right there, like when you come through the York Concourse, it stops right there. And York Street is now looking like the Don Valley Parkway in terms of rush hour, on there.
Colleagues, we all need to speak into the mics.
Sorry, yeah,
Because
sorry.
people at this end of the table are having trouble hearing.
It does go across to,
Louder, Jack.
the path is open. It does cross York Street and goes to the west side of York Street. It also goes north across Front Street into the,
But not at the York, like where you come down through the York Concourse. And there's a step up that has an exit right on the street and an elevator exit right on the street. But the path does not continue under the street up York Street,
Correct,
It's
correct, that's correct.
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, it was supposed to.
Bruce can comment on the.
Okay, I thought
where
it was
that
supposed to
stands.
do that.
So the stage one that we had agreement with the city to cost share was the path connection across Front Street to the north side of Front Street, just to the, a little bit to the west of the Royal York.
Yeah.
I think it's One University Place is where the elevator and the stairway emerges. There has always been a plan to continue further north up York to Wellington. To date, the city, I believe, has put that part on hold pending their current process in terms of retendering the balance of the work on Union Station. We think it's an important piece, and we'll continue to be working with the city on it. But I think right now their focus is on completing the next round of the Union Station reconstruction and then coming back to that piece at a later date.
That's a city decision, not a Metrolinx decision.
That is correct.
City says no, okay.
Bonnie,
Very small question for Leslie. When you consider diesel versus electrified and the consideration of the distance between stations, can you just help me understand better the 1 and 2 kilometer comment that is in the document? Depending upon the train, is there a benchmark related to ideal distance that you can use an electrified train to travel? I was trying to understand that area, and I'm sorry, I can't see
Yeah,
the
I think
page.
you're on slide 17, I
Yes.
believe, in the notes.
Yes.
What we're trying to explain is that with electrification, you can accelerate, decelerate, so you can put stations tighter together. With diesel, you don't have that ability, so the distance is a little further. That's what that's pointing to, yes.
So Leslie, I love the way you're doing this comprehensive analysis of stations systemically rather than just bouncing off a particular group that wants a particular station. This would appear to be an objective, evidence-based analysis. What's the best criticism of it? Do any of our partner municipalities or any of our partner organizations have a different view on station location? Or is it just that they would weight different of the criteria potentially differently depending on where you sit? Is it the methodology that would be the subject of debate, or would it be the weightings within the methodology that would be the subject of debate that might cause reasonable people of good faith to differ on the outcomes?
So we haven't done a full consultation and engagement in the depth that you're describing, but I would, from what we've heard so far, it's about the weighting. So if you're in a local municipality, the emphasis and your mandate is around local access, local service. We have a mandate that I think is about integration, but both regional and local. So our methodology and the way we're approaching it sort of has that, I'll use that term, bias. And a municipality would have a local bias, which is fair. So I think if
You think
there's...
the methodology be accepted, but
Yeah,
different people would weight the factors, the 41 factors, whatever, in somewhat different way.
yeah.
Ian, you wanted to jump in on this?
Yeah, Leslie, I know you do this, but in your presentation, I wasn't quite clear. The anticipated growth around some of these stations, as we know, the Growth Secretariat has mandated certain limits and expectation from our regions. In your matrix, how much weight do you put on that public policy when you're determining what ridership will look like in the future? Maybe you could expand on that, because I know you do it, and it just didn't show up.
So yeah, and I'm just going to quickly, if you flip quickly to slide 28, we look at both provincial policy, regional, meaning regional government policy, and municipal policy to try and understand which, to ensure that we're addressing what is set out for us. As a provincial agency, obviously, we are required to follow provincial policy. That's just one of our starting points. But then we also understand at the local level there may be some more particular or detailed things. So we try to calibrate between these two because sometimes they aren't always congruent. So I think that's part of the exercise.
Thank you.
I think we should move on. We're behind on the schedule. That's all extremely interesting and encouraging what you're reporting. Leslie, did you say the spring you'll come back with a more in the form of recommendations?
Yes.
These are the following X stations that should be added over
Yes.
the implementation of RER and Smart Track?
And I'm hoping this spring, possibly earlier. And just actually, I know if you could indulge me, I'd like to actually thank Alana Horowitz and Richard Borbridge, who really are the brains behind doing
You
this
guys
work.
stand up so we know who you are.
Because
Thank you very much for your work. It's extremely impressive. Anything else to this team? Okay, we'll go to the next item, which is, Jack, you stay where you are. John Jensen, you come forward. Nice shirt, John.
Thank you.
Sharp. This is an update on the rapid transit capital projects. Jack's sitting in the same seat because Jack's in charge of all capital projects, both on the GO side, RER side, and rapid transit. John and Jack, over to you.
Thank you. Just want to give the board an update on the progress we're making on the rapid transit projects that are in our project portfolio. Viva Next, BRT, we're very close to finalizing a contract with for design build finance on the last section in Highway 7 for the Viva Next program. It's called the H2 bundle on Highway 7 in Vaughan and Richmond Hill. And we're looking to award that contract soon, and it's the recommended contractor is Ellis Don and Coco Paving, and they are the preferred proponent. On the Eglinton Crosstown, As mentioned earlier, we did have the commercial and financial close with the Crosslinks Consortium in July. That contractor is ramping up activities and moving forward. We also have selected an independent certifier called the BTY Group in July, and they'll be supporting the Crosslink project, as well as an on-site technical compliance and quality activities contract with Fort Transit, which is a consortium of Marshall Macklin Monahan, Hatchmont McDonald, and I guess it was Delcan. It's called Parsons Transportation now. On Finch LRT, as Bruce mentioned earlier, we've issued a request for proposals for the alternate financing and procurement methodology, and we're hoping to get those submittals in by the end of this year and go out to the RFP early in January next year. On the Viva Next bus program, just a quick snapshot. The next section to open is going to be up in Newmarket on Davis Drive. We're looking and marching towards opening the Davis Drive section around the end of November. December is the target for the contractor to open that segment. And with that opening, we'd have about I think 30% of the BRT up and running. So that's a major milestone. So we continue to march on and actually get this program into revenue service.
Notice that the former chairman of York Region is here, Bill Fish. Bill, why don't you just come forward and tell us your level of satisfaction with how this project, which you were the author of, you initiated, you got going. Good job. Are you happy with how we're doing? Are you unhappy?
I think our region, the people of our region, our staff team for sure are very happy, not only with what we've accomplished, but where we're headed to. And I want to congratulate and thank the staff members from Metrolinx who've done great work, along with our staff team. I'm no longer the chair, by the way. I'm speaking from the past, 2014, but I keep track of things quite a lot. And I want to just let you know that the team that's working with our team have worked together for, I don't know, about eight or 9 years now. We're moving forward in an incredible fashion, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished in York Region, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished with all of you. So to the board, and I know my council and my previous board is feeling very good about what the future holds, not only for York Region, but I think, as I've seen this morning, for all of the GTA or GTHA areas. So congratulations to all.
And what's the citizen reaction to the service so far?
Well,
I realize it's early days,
Yes.
but
Well, it's interesting. Although it's been early days, we've been going for quite a long time, but our citizens are very impressed with what we are now offering in a manner in which we've never offered it before. And we've made sure that the system itself is top-notch and first class, and our citizens feel they're getting the best type of service available to them in the circumstances that we found ourselves in, which is incredible growth very, very quickly. The impacts that they make together with what we've tried to accomplish. So to answer your question, Mr. Chair, it's going extremely well.
thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And that was a dangerous question for me to ask. I didn't know what the answer was
I know
going to
you
be.
didn't.
So thank you for that very positive report.
So
Back to you, Jack.
This slide depicts the phased opening. So we are open between Leslie and Warden in 2014, 2015, 2016 on Davis Drive. And then we pretty much have an opening every year right up to 2020 to complete the entire program. And we're on budget and moving forward with the region. Another municipal partner in Peel region is the Mississauga Transitway, and that's a section of that is open. We opened the Erin Mill Station in September of this year, and the Square One bus terminal station building is scheduled to open by the end of 2015. We're on track for completion of the Transitway in 2017, including Renforth. And we're making improvements to the 407 connectivity from Winston Churchill Station, and that's expected in 2019. So again, trying to build a network here. I'm going to pass it over to John Jensen, and John has been moving the light rail program, and he's going to give you a status on the light rail projects.
So thanks, Jack. As Jack mentioned earlier, and actually Bruce mentioned earlier, we awarded the Eglinton Crosstown this summer to the joint venture of Crosslinks Transit Solution, or actually a consortium, SNC Lavalin, Ellis Don, AECon, and ACS. That team is working forward with the Metrolinx team right now, working on their initial design submissions and starting to advance the project. And we're also working on co-location facilities to put the Metrolinx team and the Crosslinx team together in the same facility so that they can work well together going forward and be well connected. So we expect that to move forward shortly before the end of this year. As you're all aware, the Crosstown has been under construction for some time. We're tunneling on the Crosstown. On the west tunnel section, you recall back in the spring, we moved the tunnel boring machines over Allen Road, and they started boring east from Allen Road towards Yonge Station, and they're heading towards Bathurst Street right now. On the east, there's a bit of an update to that bullet. The tunnel boring machines are in the launch shaft, almost ready to go, just some final testing and commissioning of the machines. We expect them to start boring by the end of the month. On the Finch West Light Rail project, as mentioned, the RFQ has been released. I know the slide's saying it will be released. It has been released early in September, and we expect the RFQ submissions to be due in November. So that's exciting as that project moves forward as well. And as Jack mentioned, we anticipate an RFP early in the new year, potentially in January. On the Hamilton front, sorry? Oh, I'm on Hurontario. Sorry about that. I flipped an extra slide. So the Hurontario project, the EA was completed in 2014, and we're about 3 years from construction, but we're working actively on that project as we speak. Some of the next steps that we're looking at that project are tendering for the technical advisory services, so we can move forward with the board we'll be moving forward with a board recommendation on that. And then acquisition of property, development of agreements with local governments, and then there's some discussions in Brampton that we're all following with respect to the resolution of the alignment in that area. And then, of course, developments of an early works plan moving forward.
Bruce, do you want to take a minute and just say where we stand on the Brampton alignment question?
Absolutely. So the issue with the Brampton alignment, basically from Steeles Avenue North to the Brampton GO station, is a debate that's occurring locally with the council in terms of whether or not to continue to follow Main Street in Brampton or whether to look at alternative alignments. Our position has been is that we've been working in partnership with Brampton and Mississauga for the past number of years to come to the technically preferred route alignment, which follows the Main Street alignment up into the Brampton GO station. There is I think a difference of views among councillors, and the City Council has not yet been able to come to a conclusion about what their perspective is. They've retained a facilitator to bring them to a conclusion about what their position will be in the end. And there are some meetings scheduled over the course of early October to engage with the facilitator and council. We'll be part of that process. And we've asked that the city make a decision by the end of October for a couple of reasons. One reason being, first and foremost, is that we're trying to advance the project. We had set some schedules and timelines, and John mentioned a few moments ago about the retention of technical advisory services. And of course, to retain technical advisors, you need to know what the scope of the project is. So we'd like to come to a conclusion with City Council by the end of October. So that's basically where we are with the process, and we would expect that sometime over the course of next month, City Council will conclude what their position is. If they're supportive of the alignment, then the project marches forward. If they are not supportive of the alignment, then our approach is to continue with the project as far north as Steeles Avenue, so that we can deliver a great, well-performing project for the people in both Brampton and Mississauga that still connects up to key elements of the regional network.
And the facilitator is our long-lost former board member, Lee Parsons.
That's right.
But I take it that's utterly independent of the fact he used to be a board member. That is, there's no connection of us to Lee directly.
That's right.
Okay. Back to you,
Okay, on to Hamilton then. As the board's aware, back in May, the province announced a commitment to the line. They also mentioned that we would look at a spur line to connect the new West Harbour GO station and also improve pedestrian access to the Hamilton GO station. As of now, we've also assigned a dedicated director for Metrolinx to that project, and that director is actively engaged with the project and working with the City of Hamilton as we go forward. Also, we've been meeting with the City of Hamilton to discuss project governance and establishing a project office, developing a memorandum of agreement, and working towards additional planning and environmental work. And to that point, the firm Steer Davies Gleave has been engaged by Hamilton to update the environmental assessment to address some of the changes that I just mentioned, look at a maintenance facility as well for that site moving forward. And again, we're looking at the acquisition of property and developing an early works plan as we move forward. So that's our update for the bus rapid transit and the rapid transit projects for this quarter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jack. Any questions to Jack and John on any of that?
Mr. Chairman?
Please, Rahul.
Quick one. It's a procurement-related one, Jack. Some time ago, there was a discussion around this table regarding Bombardier and delays of deliveries that related to TTC. And at that time, we sort of had the same question on, is that going to have any impact on delivery for some of our vehicles, particularly as it relates to any of this? Any update on that, and what's your level of confidence that that's going to be on time?
I think we've certainly benefited quite a bit by the TTC and their experience, since there is some commonality between the new streetcars and the light rail vehicle. The light rail vehicle is a bit wider, a tad longer. The current prognosis is that a lot of the problems we were experiencing with the assembly of the frames and underframes in Mexico have been resolved. We've had a meeting just recently with Bruce and the president of Bombardier Transportation here, and I think they've taken a number of steps to improve the quality issues that they ran into, which were also plaguing the TTC in terms of their deliveries. We have worked with them on a new delivery schedule. The Crosstown Finch West projects will not be impacted by the delivery schedule. We had a little bit of slack in the schedule, so not that that's necessarily a good thing of them taking advantage of that. It does have an impact on the ION project, which is in Kitchener, because we sold 14 options to Kitchener. And we are concerned for Kitchener in that they wanted to save time in the procurement by buying the options from Metrolinx. So we feel some obligation to work with Kitchener and puts pressure on the Bombardier people to meet their obligations to Kitchener, since they've awarded their construction contract, and they are moving to opening the ION, I believe, in early 2018, so it's 17? Late 17. So they are working and assuring us that they will meet those requirements.
Any other questions to Jack or John? At some point, we should have a presentation on the Eglinton Crosstown, the flyovers. It's a pretty exhilarating package.
Yeah, it's an exciting project.
That you've got there. Today is not the day for it, but we should find a way to make that a public presentation. Okay. Thank you very much, Jack. John?
Thank you.
That brings us back to Leslie. Now, Leslie, this fare integration is probably the intellectually hardest issue we have. The deck reads well. I don't want you to go through the whole deck, because I think you should assume the board has read the deck carefully, because it does read well. So if you can try and keep your presentation short, that would invite time for discussion of it. I know it's only a status report, but it would be good to get engagement with the board on this. And that is going to take, given that clock, that's going to require you to not do a full page turn as you go through this deck. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will just start with two things. First of all, I really want to thank the local operators who have worked with us so far to bring us to the point where we have a common statement of vision, goals, and objectives. So these are crafted. They've been a series of meetings over the last year and a half, and all 10 operators within this region have been working closely with us. Secondly, just to remind the board and those here that part of the reason that we need to address fare integration now versus previously is twofold. One, the trend of the types of trips that are growing are now far more complex, more cross-boundary, and not as binary as they used to be in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, number one. And secondly, the fact that we are expanding our network and our transit system with all the projects that Jack just described means the overlaps and intersections between local transit and other types of regional rapid transit make fare integration even more of a pressing issue. So just to highlight that. So I'm just going to not necessarily restate the problem and just give you a quick update on where we are in getting to the point of understanding what are the most appropriate fare structure types for this region. I will be returning here to the board in spring of 2016 with more definitive preferred structure, fare structure recommendations. I'm going to move over quickly as a result and go just to state the vision statement so that folks understand as a collective with all the other operators what we hope, what an integrated fare strategy would mean. And it is the hope that a fare integration strategy is to increase customer mobility, and these are regional, across the region, increase transit ridership while maintaining the financial sustainability of transit services. And the strategy will help to remove barriers and enable transit to be perceived and experienced as one network composed of multiple systems. So you'll know that the lenses through which we are looking at this integrated fare structure is around both the customer, the regional lens, and so it is an important point to note. The goals are threefold, and what I want to talk about is that fare integration has many parts. And what I'm presenting today is very much focused on the fare structure. There are other elements that make fare integration that include the payment system itself, such as Presto, what we refer to as concessions. So these are discounts we give to specialize, for example, a senior fare is a concession, the types of products that we produce, relative to fare, and of course price, which is different from fare structure. So I would just want to make sure people understand the syntax that I'm using when I refer to fare structure. We've identified a sort of four-stage developmental process for better understanding and fine-tuning what is the correct fare structure for this region. And really, we're at the very beginning of the first stage, which identifying how certain fare types meet the vision, goals, and objectives that the group has set out. Once we've done that, we'll proceed to applying it specifically to the region and using a far more detailed analysis. So you'll see on the right side of that chart where we focus in the first step is on the type of service and trip length as the first filter before we move to the next series of filters in stage 2, which is about service categories, the size of zones, price structures, and transfer policies. Relative to the concept, the issue of service, we look upon service as being a continuum where you have a uniform fare for all types of service on one end, and we have route-specific fares on the other end, and everything in between. When we look at our region today, we are landing somewhere in the middle. The 4 items listed really tell us about the different ways we're using the ranges in between. The next category in this stage is around trip length, and on one end, we would refer to as a region-wide flat fare within one zone, so everywhere, each geography, it's the same fare. Or we have the other extreme, which is measurements by distance, and then everything in between. And in this case, in this region, we are sort of bracketed 2 ends in the middle zone in terms of how we practice our fare structures. So when you look at the matrix on these considerations by different typologies on the continuum, there are roughly about 9, of which we have in practice 8. And so the next step of our work has been, that I want to report on, is how we've gone in terms of evaluating those 9 or 8 into a shorter list. So using our business case framework, we have done an assessment. I'm not going to go into detail. This slide 19 and 20 talk about the findings relative to service and then relative to trip lengths. But if I could zoom ahead to the summary findings, what we've at this stage uncovered is that fare structure types that are not responsive to service and trip lengths, we do not think should be investigated further. This removes uniform fares for all service types and region-wide flat fares from further consideration. So we've eliminated those. The next thing is we've looked at time-based fares. And when I'm referring to time-based fares, I mean real-time fares, as distinct from currently we have time-based transfers. So we have transfers based on a certain amount of time. That's very different than a time-based fare. Time-based fare means if I go from here to Unionville in the morning and it's a slow train, I'm paying the time. But if I come home and it's faster, I'm paying a lower fare. So it creates a sort of there's an inversion in that. Flat fares, we think, should be considered most appropriately for short local transit services only. And we think that measured distance fares should be considered for higher order services. And that zone-based and hybrid fare structure types should be retained for more detailed investigation. So what that has led us to is that we are now deciding to proceed with 4 types of fare structures that we want to advance now to the next level of more detailed analysis, looking at a far more points. And this is things like service categories, transfer policies, and so forth that I listed. We're now at a point, we will now have a much further, deeper consultation with municipalities and other stakeholders, and we will extend that to public outreach. And I will be coming back to you in the spring of 2016 with recommendations. We do have ongoing work with transit operators on things like concession definitions and fare products, and that's ongoing. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Leslie. Let's start with you, Rahul.
Thank you. Leslie, you sort of started the conversation by highlighting how this has become a bigger priority given the nature of travel in the region. So now I'm going to ask you the impossible question, and that is, when's this get rolled out? So from a user standpoint, I think we all appreciate that there's an enormous collaborative out there, parties that need to be involved in the conversation. But I guess at the end of the day, the question is, when does this actually happen? What's your best guess on where we'd see something like fare integration?
So I would say I have greater certainty about knowing how I get to step 4, which is how do we implement and coming up with an idea about implementation. I can tell you if once a decision is made and an agreement with that structure, if it's an aggressive implementation plan, it could happen within 2 to 3 years. If it's an incremental over time, it could take up to 10 years. It's a hard, as you say, impossible question. The first we need to get to is understanding what is when we are in the discussion of what is the implementation plan, which is stage 4, which is later in 2016, we will have a better idea about what the appetite is for advancing. So I have to say that it's hard to tell at this point.
Leslie, aren't we going to be forced to some decisions, incremental decisions, on a much faster timetable than that? Like, I'm thinking of the new Spadina subway extension and its intersection with the new GO station for the buses and the students at York University. Some form of fare integration is going to be required to resolve that intersection, isn't it?
Yes, and we're working.
So just as a note, there's a particular one there, and I could think of 10 more like that. Aren't we going to have to deal with those in real time instead of on this very extended time frame?
So I think those things are going to happen in parallel, depending on how where we land on the fare structure. because of course the fare structure is kind of a massive system-wide change, which is more difficult to implement. In the meantime, projects are progressing, examples like that are happening, and we're trying to, as we're progressing and refining the type of fare structures we're moving towards, we're trying to, on a day-to-day basis, in what I would call the immediate problems, not preclude the ability to head in a direction that we're heading, generally speaking. So yes, decisions are going to have to be made in the interim.
Second, is there a working assumption in your group that any new fare structure, more integrated fare structure, has to be revenue neutral to the system? Or do you relax that constraint and imagine that there might be a public investment in achieving fare integration that wouldn't be fully revenue neutral? What's the working assumption?
So there's two steps in which that question comes up. Step two, when we start to look at pricing structures and transitive policies, we begin to get an idea of what it is in terms of dollar, and before we evaluate. And then once we've done that, we can do sensitivity analysis on revenue neutral versus plus or minus. And then when we get to step four, which on the implementation, we'll test it again. So we have that kind of direction. It's sort of down the center is where we're going, and then we have to lean on either side in our decision
I'm
making.
trying to ask a different question, which is, if you try to solve the problem
Yes.
on the assumption there can be no net revenue loss, some fares go up, some go down, but that's one vision of it. Another competing vision, and I'm not staking ground here, I'm just trying to get it, is fare integration is so important to the realization of the benefits of the network, it would be worth a subsidy to allow some changes to be made that weren't revenue neutral to make a transit system whole in order to get those transit benefits, the public benefits of the system. Is that latter option even within the imagination of the group, or are you disciplining yourselves to stick within the first, that is, whatever you come up with has to be revenue neutral?
No, we're giving ourselves the ability to address the latter.
Okay.
Rob, could I ask just kind
Please.
of tied in with this? I noticed earlier you used the language of financial sustainability as a goal. Is that revenue neutral, do no harm to where we are today across this group, or is it we've got other issues of cross-subsidization and so on, and subsidization, and we have to somehow get to some new net state of financial sustainability?
So the way we're approaching it's not quite that. We're starting down the path of saying, okay, if we made everyone back whole the way it was, how would that direction? Then we're going to examine, based on, are there other fare structures for which we shift away from that, but the benefits outweigh the costs. So we have to evaluate it on that basis. We can't be so rigid that we don't enable ourselves to see that there are other ways around it.
So the starting point on financial sustainability is do no harm to current revenue.
Yeah, and then we move from there, yes.
Next question. You state as one of your summary findings, quote, time-based fares are variable and unpredictable and should not be investigated further. And I take it that's not about time-based transfers, this is about time-based fares. And then I read a trenchant critique of that online, saying this was a too firm a conclusion without sufficient analysis behind it. So I'm inviting you to explain to us why the group has come firmly to that conclusion. I take it after analysis and debate and consideration, not just because you don't like them.
So I think the example I gave earlier about how real-time based fares would work, why it creates I use the term loosely, a bit of a inversion. And I'm going to ask Eve to kind of give a little bit more detail, but really, can I introduce Eve Wyatt?
Of course.
Yes, Eve, come on up. When we have these kind of, the term I will be using is inconsistencies. It doesn't perform well from a service level, and it creates pushes people to create habits that are contrary to what we would like to support. So go ahead, maybe talk about that, Eve.
So time has a
Speak
couple.
into the microphone, it's hard to hear you.
We looked at time has a number of different ways that it's reflected in the fare structure. One is that you could, as a kind of proxy for the distance traveled, use the travel time. Taxis work this way to some extent, so that you basically pay for the amount of time that you were taking the trip from when you started to when you finished. And that's the fare structure that would be based on time, which we've evaluated here. Another aspect is the use of time to limit transfers. So you pay for the trip and you get a transfer, and there's usually a window of validity, and there's a good deal that could be done in using that policy to limit opportunities or to complement essentially the fare structure.
This conclusion does not relate to time-based transfer.
No, they're very much
This
still on the
relates to the
table.
idea that you'd measure time of the trip and get charged based on the amount of time the trip took.
That's right, and the reason that
And that depends on traffic or service or
Yes,
whatever. And you're saying that's unpredictable.
And it's basically perverse, because the slower your trip, the more time it takes, the more you would have to pay. And in fact, you want to pay more for a faster trip. So it's got a fundamental issue with it.
So the worse your service that particular trip, because of
You're paying
whatever,
paying more,
you pay more as your.
which is,
No, but I would have thought you'd do it the other way, is you give an
Discount?
express service for Barrie, and why wouldn't you charge more for that?
Exactly. So if it's a better quality of service, a faster service, more reliable service, it's worth more to the customer. And so the fare structure should reflect that.
So you do think time, to just take Stephen's point, that you might have a premium for an express service over a local service?
And that would be reflected indirectly as it's an express service, it's a higher order service, it's a faster service, so the price would reflect
but
that.
that's on the quality of the service, not the time. Yeah,
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
guess when I hear that, when you say
Yeah.
time,
yeah, no, no.
it, I get a
It's a little
different view. You
confusing,
say, well, it's
yes.
faster, you're not gonna charge differently. Okay, so you pick up the time component by saying then it's a higher order service.
I've been using the term real time. It helps me when I'm, as versus just time based. It's because it is a real time. That's the one we've eliminated.
Right.
Brian?
The terminology is confusing, at least to me. Could you help me? I have occasion to go to Vancouver from time to time. I take the Canada line in, and they have time of day pricing. You know, it's more expensive in rush hour and less expensive in off times. What's that called?
So time of day pricing,
Oh, it is called time of day.
It's not in, it's in this
and
category.
it's the third way that time is reflected or that we're looking at, and that will be looked at after we've looked at the fare structure.
And it's still alive.
It's
Yes,
still
yeah,
alive.
Your fair and agree. So time-based transfers are alive,
Yes,
time of day pricing's alive,
yes.
express versus local premium is
Still
alive,
yes,
but a straight, how long did the trip take
is off the table.
kind of fare is not on the table.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Others have questions? Rahul?
Just back to my initial one, I just want to take us back to kind of a process question. 2 to 10 years is a nebulous time frame. This is a big issue with a lot of people involved with it. Can you comment on the leadership and the commitment from the various parties and the agencies to get it done? And who's driving this process? Who's actually owning this?
So I would say there's a high degree of engagement with the transit operators. They have been keen coming to the table. We've been facilitating. We Metrolinx have been facilitating the discussion, and I think so. We're trying to grow the leadership and pass on the passion for what we're doing throughout the region. So I would say we're the catalyst. But the regions are coming, the municipality, the operators are coming forward with us. We're not 100% there. They're not fully waving a flag. I think their skepticism, as you would expect, is around stage 4, which is the implementation.
Do we drive this process?
Right now, we are driving the process, yes.
But this report is from your group, or is this report just from you?
So this is a staff report reflecting the work of the technical advisory group and the work that we've been advancing with the municipal operators.
Some of us went to a speech our minister gave at the hotel over by the Sky Dome, where he talked about fare integration as a top priority. What did he say about fare integration and leadership and its importance?
I think, well, it's always I can't speak for the minister. I would say that he feels very strongly about the importance of fair integration to Queen's Park and to the government. And so we are aggressively moving on our work. On the question of, when we finally have to make a decision, I expect and hope that all parties will be in great support. So the goal is to bring everybody along. But we do know that we have strong leadership, express leadership from the minister.
I mentioned that, Rahul, just because if you're thinking about championing, I think there is a championing coming from the province and very articulately put back in whenever that was. Bruce, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that in the context of leadership, that this is all about regional integration, and we are seeing more pressure for integration as opposed to less pressure for integration. And when we think about the success of programs like Regional Express Rail and Smart Track and how it gets integrated into Regional Express Rail, fair integration is a significant part of trying to measure success of those programs, because we really need to leverage the backbone of the Presto Fare Card to be able to support how we use our regional and local transit services differently and more effectively going forward. So I say, yes, this is a regional leadership piece, and we all stand to gain across the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area to be able to advance this forward.
Leslie, your technical group has a compendium of all the fare structures and all 10 of the, because this has examples and descriptive, but it isn't the detail that some would want to look at, that you're looking at, but the board isn't looking at and the public isn't looking at. Is it possible to post a compendium of these different fare I know I could go to each one of those providers, but can you put together an appendix or something that would be a
Our
compendium?
plan is actually, after this meeting, we're posting live actually both a technical report and summary of the technical advisory group work and the summary charts on the evaluation of the various options.
That's great.
That was I was going to
great.
mention
That's
that at
great.
the end. Yeah.
Thanks. Are there any further, Bonnie?
So Rob, just a question from
Into your microphone,
knowledge, or Bruce, question from your knowledge, or Leslie. If you think about many of these things, is this a little bit of you stand where you sit? I always go in my head to best practices and say, when we look at regions around the world, around North America, are there proxies for the nature of what we're trying to deal with as a region? And do those best practices inform what we're doing? Or is it so different jurisdiction to jurisdiction that it is, you sit where you stand where you sit. So we've got to go through every single element of the process, not just because the process is important for buy-in, but there is no best practice. This is what happens. I don't know enough about fair integration worldwide or in the jurisdictions we pay attention to.
So step one of this process was to look around the world at how other jurisdictions have approached this, and there are many different examples, some more successful than others in terms of addressing these kinds of issues. And one of the key findings that we got from that is that there isn't a single best practice that you can look at, because so much of it is based on the history, tradition, culture, experience in that community, and there's lessons to take in terms of how you might apply some of these practices, but you have to clearly position them in the context of the environment that they're being implemented in. The success or failure is really going to be is how effective are we going to be in working with the municipalities, working with obviously the customers and the public on how we move ahead with a plan, because it is such a significant impact on their day-to-day lives.
So on this one, the process you're saying is really, really important to get anywhere on it.
Absolutely.
The process is important, but at the end of the day, the choices are important. Yeah. The way I used to think about it when I had Bruce's job was to say, just imagine the systems were all one, and we had all the subsidies and all the costs all in the budget. What fare structure would you put in place to optimize the use of the entire network that's now covered by 10 systems and all the different modes? The answer to that, put aside the problems of bringing together different, I'm saying, imagine it's all one. The answer to that's not obvious, okay? What would you do? Much less what you do when you've got to bring together all the different parties like, but, so it's really hard substantively to sort out what is the best set of fares for the different forms of transit and the different distances, different times, all this. So I think it's an enormously difficult problem. So I'm thrilled we're making the progress we're making, but I don't think anybody should hide from the fact there's still a lot of tough choices that lie ahead in the next. When you come back next time, it'll be tougher, and when you come back the time after that, it'll be tougher again.
Yes,
Is that fair?
very fair to say that. It's going to get increasingly more difficult, yes.
But this is creating a terrific foundation for this, plus making available all the technical analyses, I think is really good too. If I don't see any further questions on this, we'll say thank you to Leslie. We're not doing too badly on time. We're 10 minutes behind schedule. The next item is Greg Percy and Leslie Wu giving us the Pan Am and Pan Am debrief, which I think the short version of which is great outcome. Greg, congratulations to you and all the teams that worked on this. We've read your report. If you can do this report in 5 minutes rather than 10, that'll have my problem. Greg.
Happy to help you deal with that, Rob. You were right, it's a team win, and I think for context setting, we're talking about Pan Am Parapan games that were 30 different competition venues, 400 competition events, and therefore transportation became the glue to help that be successful, and that became sort of the rallying point for all of us involved in delivery, all of us including Metrolinx, MTO, TTC, and many others, including local transit. So there were 30 partners in all that had to pull together and focus not on their respective areas, but focus on the task, which was the successful delivery of Pan Am Games. So I'm just going to touch on a few of the highlights. What we affectionately got to call the UTCC, Unified Transportation Coordination Center, hence we didn't use that name often, was a really big win. We had Go Transit had staff in that room, not 24/7, but close to 24/7, as did many, many others, whether you were transportation delivery, OPP, City of Toronto Police, and so forth. And I toured there actually with the Premier during Pan Am Games, and it was amazing how they had focused on the task, which was Pan Am. Business cards were set aside, didn't matter who you represented, it was all about delivery of the Pan Am Games. So it was a really good buzz in the room. And I think that was a real major contributor to success. One of the early decisions, Toronto 2015, was to have transit included in the purchase of a ticket for Pan Am. That model worked well. One of the things we hadn't done in that scale before was we, as did others, we had to bring together 200 ambassadors. We called them ambassadors. They're staff and summer students, all to be trained up, wear a common uniform, if you will. And they were basically people directing other people. Because keep in mind, for Pan Am Games, most people come from outside of Ontario, certainly outside of Toronto. So a lot of folks came in from other countries to support their athletes and their officials. So to help them get from A to B when you have a fairly fragmented venue network was a challenge. But it worked tremendously well thanks to literally thousands of people, volunteers and staff, depending on what venue was involved. One of the things, in York Region really stepped up on this one. We created a regional paratransit program called Call One. York Region stepped up and said they would lead that. And this was to coordinate accessible transit across the GTHA. And it was as important for Pan Am as it was for Parapan. And I would have to say, and hats off to York Region for doing that, it too was a big success. In terms of extra trips, the summer luckily for Go is a little bit of a downtime seasonally, but we put on 875 extra trips, trains and buses, to support the movement of people back and forth to venues. The HOV network actually, for Go alone on our bus service was a big upside, and we actually had some routes that were 20 minutes improved using the HOV network that is set up to help athletes and spectators move from A to B, but it really was helping us as well. what does this mean for Metrolinx Go Transit in terms of increased trips? We're still working on those numbers, but the early reports are in around 400,000 new trips during the Pan Am Parapan Games. It's a big number for us, and since the trains were quite a bit more crowded, but it worked. A key enabler for the Pan Am Games was the delivery of Up Express on time on June 6th, and that was a big success for Metrolinx. Kathy Haley, I don't know if Kathy's here, but she was also a torch carrier for the Pan Am Games, and that was on July 10th, and lots of photography around Kathy carrying the torch in the Up Express trains and then doing a handoff and it going up York. TripLinks, and Eva's still here. Good. Eva's our team leader on TripLinks, which was really a program, if you will, that was accessible to everyone. It got up to 10,000 users per day to help people get from A to B in the GTHA, to cross transit areas, to make their trip simpler, and to really be a focal point to guide them into the venues and back home again. It was a big success. I think to bring that in as early, I think Toronto 2015 really looked to TripLinks to come and bail them out and make it all work together, and it certainly did all of that. And hats off to Eve and her team for making sure that happened. Some of the things, when you have so many people rallying around a cause like that, some of the big stories actually that made media were the human interest stories, how parents of athletes who found they were in the wrong place. Someone stepped up and either drove them to see their sons and daughters participate or somehow helped everybody out. Everyone pitched in, and we got reports every day from my team on things that unfolded, things that went well, things not as well. Happy to say most went well. We were on conference calls every day. This was a major, major effort, and the risk of failure was well, it certainly wasn't possible. And one of the underpinning to this whole Pan Am Parapan Games process was the Toronto Transportation Demand Management. MTO really pushed this one hard, and they were leaders for us and on the transportation side. And they were looking for about a 20% reduction in the movement of people through the GTHA, normal residents of the GTHA. We haven't figured out how close we got to that, but certainly it was significant. Metrolinx participated in that as well. And Smart Commute is coming up shortly, but Smart Commute was a big part of that as well in terms of gathering people, moving them from A to B, and the participation in Smart Commute grew dramatically. Some of the other stuff, because I want to give a hats off to the engineering side, the construction, West Harbour Station. Unheard of speed of building a station and having it ready, because it was the gateway into the football games at soccer games at Hamilton. That worked tremendously. There's a photo in the deck on that. So when I had the opportunity to tour the UTCC with the Premier, for her it was all about the legacy of the games. And the biggest legacy, one of the bigger legacies for us was the level of collaboration between the providers of transit, the providers of transportation more broadly, and certainly the police services, how that works so well. And she was all about how do we continue all those good things that we learned there? How do we build them into how we define our process and move forward? So that is one of the things. We have more debriefing to do because there were a lot of lessons learned. But I think for Metrolinx, for Toronto, Ontario, even Canada, Pan Am Games became a huge success overall.
Congratulations. Really great, really great. To me, one of the most striking things in your deck was the improvement in GO bus service by virtue of the HOV lanes.
Absolutely.
Which shows interaction with another file. That's not our file, but it shows the interaction between what we do and what the province is doing on other files.
Well, we've been on this for 6 years. I remember the CEO before Bruce had me in his office when I first met him. And he said, the Pan Am evaluation team's coming to Toronto, and Greg, you have to make Hamilton look like it's beside Toronto. And that was a bit of a challenge, but we made it work, and obviously it was successful at work. We got awarded the games, but been on this for a while. So it's been great for the company.
I just have a quick question, because this is quite impressive, but I'm wondering, like, what are the indicators that you really have gotten good recognition and sustainable recognition for this,
For the I think
for the work that we've done?
that's not sort of the motivator for us, really, to be honest. We wanted to contribute to the success of Pan Am Games, and I think that really drove everybody, and it was a total commitment. This is not a Greg success. This is a Metrolinx team success in every aspect. And that really what drove people, and it was a feel-good thing. And some of the stories that came out were absolutely amazing about how staff helped others out and made the games happen. And I'd like to do a call-out. I don't know how many are here, but...
Barry's here.
Barry?
Barry's Stenard.
Barry and Nadine. I don't know if Nadine's here.
Nadine is here. And Chris is on vacation.
You guys have to stand up.
And you got to stand up. Barry, stand up. Thank you very much.
Eve?
Congratulations. Great job.
Annabelle here? There was a large team, and there's just a few folks here, and I just, my hat's off to them because it was full commitment.
The board endorses that shout out. Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. We're still 10 minutes behind, but not more than 10, so you didn't make things worse, Greg. You're right. You took exactly the time you'd been given originally, which means, Marianne, it's up to you to get us partly caught up. The next is the report of the customer experience, not the customer service, the customer experience committee. The chair will report. We've been asked, why don't all the committee chairs report in these sessions? Why only the customer experience chair? We discussed it internally and decided that given the role of the customer and the business we're in, the customer experience chair should report at every meeting, and that other chairs should report when there's something special and of general significance to report, and those items often come up as other items on the agenda in any event. So we're going to stick with the practice of only inviting the chair of the Customer Experience Committee to report at our public meetings. Marianne?
Thank you, Rob. I'll catch up. I have 5 slides. So the first item is the Customer Experience Advisory Committee update. So this is a committee separate from the Customer Experience Committee, which Carl Zaire, our new board member, has agreed to chair and has had his first meeting in the past weeks. And I guess one of the initiatives that's come out and is worth reporting on is the strong self-serve environment for customers that is an ongoing initiative, and includes the ticket vending machines and the Presto Add Value machines. The second initiative that I'd like to report on is the Eglinton Line LRT update, which you've heard something about. One of the important aspects of this is really a system of 25 stations, 15 of them underground, 10 of them at street level, including crossover with 3 TTC stations, that is launching at this moment. And Rob has reported and James has reported on aspects of the team, the Crosslinks team. I'd like to report just on the design component of it, which is going to be led by the firm of René Daou-Lestage. René Daou is the Principal Design Excellence Coordinator, and she'll be working with IBI architects on this very large project.
And is she are you, as an expert yourself, are you happy with the choice of René Daou?
There were 2 very good teams. I would have been happy with either of them, and I think one of the things that we were able to do in this, the run-up to the evaluation, was to raise the evaluation of design component to a much higher level than it has been in the past. A real significant change to the I/O process, and I'm very pleased with this proposal.
So you would view René Daou, who I don't know, as a grade A architect?
Yes, I think she's
As a
done
Canadian
significant,
firm
great
that should be
Canadian. Should be in the top
ranks?
Yes, and I'm pleased that it is a kind of that we've picked from the national opportunities across Canada for this particular initiative.
Great.
So, and I think you'll see as there was a suggestion that we should be viewing the video, and perhaps at one next meeting it should be made available will be made available to the public for people to begin to see at a very high conceptual level the kind of clarity of the system and also how it integrates with the public realm. So this is not only a Metrolinx initiative, but actually crosses over into the city's domain of public realm, which refers to all the sidewalk landscaping that happens around all of these stations. The third is the Go Transit update, which is really a news item that James again mentioned in his RER presentation, the increase of 14 new trips on the Kitchener corridor. Probably of most significance, equal significance, is the fact that the Bay Concourse has been closed for renovation. And I think, we've lived through the closure of the York Concourse, now we'll live through the closure of the Bay Concourse. And for somebody who has poor orientation underground, I'm just figuring out the new routes as one concourse closes and another opens. So, Presto update. The general public will be seeing more and more Presto devices rolled out on the TTC legacy streetcars, and a new handheld mobile payment device is being tested that will extend Presto to other transit services. Fifth is the Up Express, reporting on the Up Express. I think, again, a great launch that Greg referred to. On-time performance is 96%. The average daily ridership is 2,500 and on track with the objective to achieve 5,000 daily riders by the end of year one. So I think this, there's a lot of publicity, there's a lot of signage, and new presence, particularly at both ends, at Union and Station and at Pearson. And I think people are beginning to understand that the service exists, and a lot of people are already using it. With the busiest day being Friday, between 3 and 7. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Questions to Marianne? Janet?
Would it be within the mandate of the committee so that when we go through an experience like the bomb scare thing, where the lessons learned or discussing that, sort of what's the customer experience in an out of our control situation, sort of for lessons learned or what we can do going forward? I mean, would that be something that might fit with the committee?
So it was reviewed, Stephen,
Staff,
by your
yeah,
committee?
yeah.
No, it was reviewed by the customer experience committee, and I think Bruce made a very good report. But I think there are some. I agree with Janet. There are some highlight items that should be, presented. So, Bruce, I mean, you did a very good job. It was discussed earlier.
Maybe I'll just add one comment. And as a matter of course of every customer experience committee meeting, we try to have a highlight and focus in on an event and how it was managed and what are the lessons learned from that. And clearly the bomb scare was a significant event for our customers, and quite happy to build that into our next customer experience committee report. Our own sense is that it was obviously a significant event for our customers, where tens of thousands of people were delayed in their trip home at the end of the day. We did learn some things in terms of how the new concourse works and how customers were using the teamways, and I think that will lead into how we will change the approach we take for any kind of subsequent event of that scale. And I think the other piece is that one of the reasons why the event is such a significant event for all of our customers is because currently we have one maintenance and storage facility on the west end, and that meant the majority of our trains were trapped on the other side of the event location. When we open up the East Rail maintenance facility on the east end of the region, that will give us more flexibility in terms of how we manage the fleet. And obviously, these kinds of events will always have a customer-facing impact, but hopefully we'll build more resilience into the system as well by having more locations where we store and maintain the vehicles too.
Any other questions to Marianne? I see none. Marianne, thank you very much. You caught us up by 2.5 minutes. Nice job. That brings us to item 13 on the agenda, which is the quarterly reports. They are in order, starting with the Union Pearson Express, which we've already heard about. Kathy Haley's here. If there are any questions to Kathy, are there any further? I see none, so we'll go to Presto. Is Robert here? Yeah, Robert Hollis is here. Are there any questions to Robert? Marianne's already referred to Presto Developments. Anything anybody wants to raise on his report? Making good progress, Robert. Just keep going. And you'll be done all of TTC by the end of 2016?
Yes, the current plan is with TTC to have all of the vehicles, buses, subways.
That's great.
Actually, I have a question, Mr.
Question from Dr. Golden?
Just on the use of Presto or these loaded cards, I'm noticing now in systems around the world that they're moving just increasingly to use Visa, etc. And I just wondered, have we thought through the impact of, could Presto become obsolete?
So in
I
our
don't want to give
for-
you a heart attack here, but.
in our forward planning, we have open payments, so-called open payments, debit credit card tapping in the 2017 timeline once we finish rolling out the TTC. We already have the solution developed within Presto, and in fact, it's actually in pilot mode in Washington D.C. right now.
With their
With
Wamata
open payments, so
card,
you
with
can
their Metro
tap
card, yeah.
debit and credit cards in Washington D.C. on our system today.
Or your phone, Robert, as well.
Or a phone, so you can have the credential on a
Right, with the
mobile phone
phone
the
now.
same way. So that's all in our plan line for 2017. And we view that you're introducing open payment is going to be complementary to Presto, because Presto, in the initial phase, open payments may be only adult fares. We have to look at doing all the concession fares and other pieces. So Presto will still be the best package of features for some time into the future. So over time.
So if we had been digitally aware, say 10 years ago, and we were thinking like we would have still needed a Presto type.
Yes, 10 years ago, the only way to do this was with a smart card.
Right.
No one was doing open payments 10 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. But if we had, let's say we'd started this now, would you start developing Presto now, or would we be working on with an open system?
I think if you were starting today, you would probably look at those other payment mediums. But remember, not all credit cards have near-field communications. In fact, in the U.S., there's very few cards that have near-field. So Canada, we're very lucky our card brands have pushed the tapping feature on your card. So
I was
you
thinking of
need the availability of the product. So I would say that even if you started today, depending on your jurisdiction, you may still need a closed-loop card to provide all those features.
I think the other piece too is that not all customers can or want to use a credit or debit card to pay their transit fares. So, yes, we expect that credit and debit and mobile will be a significant part of our future, but we think there's still going to be a significant part of our customer base that are going to require some kind of a smart card-based solution. Whether you're a child and don't have a credit or debit card, whether you're unbanked, there's a variety of different populations that will continue to require a solution like Presto.
Is it fair to say, Robert, the way I think of it for Dr. Golden is Presto is two things. Presto is a card, and that may become less and less used as alternatives or substitute for it. And Presto is a big, complicated software package that calculates fares from one place to another for all the different fare systems we have. And all that software has to be behind us, whether you use a Visa card or a Presto card or a smartphone.
Yeah,
Is that a fair description?
Could that Presto be made into an app? You know what I mean? And then the app goes on to your.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say.
No, I understand.
Regardless
It's the
of
whole
regardless of the front end,
it's
the back end is common.
Yeah.
The only thing we're talking about in moving from a Presto card to a Visa card is the front end. And just as moving to this is the front end.
Right.
What's in behind it, which is where most of the work of Presto has been, is doing the calculation, recognizing you're going on, recognizing you're getting off, calculating the right fare, seeing how many times you've traveled that month, and coming up with an amount to deduct from your card.
Right.
So what will change actually in 2017 when we introduce debit and credit cards is we will also move Presto to a credential, meaning that processing will happen in the back end, and we'll get away from that complicated interchange between the card and the device, so that we'll be processing all of those transactions in the back end like a large banking system would.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions to Robert? Thank you very much, Robert. That brings us to Go Transit. Greg, you've had another good quarter. You're happy?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And yes.
Any questions to Greg on his good quarter? None. That's excellent.
love that.
Planning and policy. Leslie, you've said so much to say today. I'm not going to give you a chance to say anything more unless there's an urgent question to Leslie on aspects of her report that she didn't report on today. Okay, nothing for Leslie. Strategic communications. Judy's not here today, but if there are any questions, they can go to Anne Marie or to Carlene. Are there any questions? I see none. Capital projects. We've heard a lot from Jack and his teams. Were there any further matters anybody want to raise with Jack? That's great. All of you collectively have got us back on. We're within 2 minutes of schedule. Bruce, is there any other matter that you wish to bring before the meeting before we adjourn?
Nope, I have nothing more to add, Chair.
Does any member of the board have any matter they wish to put to Bruce in this session? I see none. That brings us to a conclusion. Thank you all very much for coming. We appreciate your attendance. Bruce and I will meet with the media for a few minutes now, just outside, in 2 or 3 minutes. And we'll see you again a quarter from now. Thank you very much.